Kylie Baxter on ABC Radio Hobart.
Music as a solution to behavioural issues in children is on the rise. Evidence is showing that behavioural disorders are increasing. In fact, research shows it surged by as much as 40%. But there's help available for parents who are just, wondering what to do, battling to keep the kids calm, your kids calm and focused, and then keeping their attention on education. That can always be a challenge, can't it? This help comes in the form of sound therapy. And I'm joined now by clinician and researcher Raphael Jardri, who is a psychologist and a pioneer in sound therapy. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kylie.
So what issues are faced by parents when dealing with behavioural issues?
Well, parents have so much to deal with, Kylie. I mean, it's a huge job. And, children have a huge job fitting in life and in school and, so much to learn. And when there are behavioural problems, it just makes that job so much harder. And you see, what happens is if children are having trouble learning, if their brain's not functioning the way it should, and they can't take on the information that they need, then they feel bad and they act out. And they don't fit in. And this just makes life so much harder for their teachers and, of course, their parents as well.
And social media, I would imagine, is contributing to that behaviour.
Well, I'm sure it is. I mean, there are so many pressures on children these days. And, those of us who are a bit older find it sad that we don't talk to each other as much anymore and we're all hooked online. And the trouble is when you get comments online, you can't respond to them immediately, and they kind of seem to be amplified when they're in writing. And yes, there are huge pressures on children. But I think that today, there's so much for children to learn, and it's a complex, difficult environment. There's so many chemicals in the air, there's so much noise, there's so much expected of children. And so a lot of them really are struggling with learning and developmental difficulties.
And let's talk a little bit about the audio and how children hear and, how they can have difficulty making sense of what they hear. Talk us through it a little bit.
Yes, well, you see, one of the first things we look for when a child doesn't seem to be performing linguistically is we look to see, have they got a hearing problem? And their hearing can be tested, and that can be ruled out. And if it's not a hearing problem, then it's most likely an auditory processing problem. And this is something that's not as well understood. And it does mean the way the ears and the brain link together, the way they communicate with each other. And when children have an auditory processing problem, they're just going to struggle with following instructions, with language development, with speech, with everything that underlies that basic academic learning in school. So it's really important that this should be addressed early, and that parents should find out about it and give the children that extra support, because it can be helped. And the sooner you address it, the better a result you're going to get, because, every day children are learning. We want to help them every day and not let them lag behind. And so it's really important to look for these signs early on and do something about it.
Now, I know as an adult, music can be incredibly calming. A lot of people use it for meditation. They run with it, do all sorts of things. How can it help children, if parents are listening, grandparents or anyone else that might have children in their lives? How can we apply music to helping these behavioural issues?
Well, what I want to stress here, Kylie, is that what we offer at Sound Therapy International isn't just music. Now, we use music to deliver the program, but we're actually delivering a sound therapy program which was developed by an ear specialist over 60 years ago. And what this does is it reactivates the middle ear muscles, the muscles in the ear, and through that, the whole auditory pathway in the nervous system. So it's a retraining program for the ears and brain and for the way we accommodate language. So we use music and stories to do that, but we're doing so much more than you do with just music that might be enjoyable or calming. We're actually rehabilitating the ears, the brain, and the nervous system with this sound therapy program.
And how do you actually know that the sound therapy works? I'd imagine there'd be, a lot of studies done on this.
Oh, there are. There's, over 100 published journal articles. I've recently done a summary of them, and I've also had a paper published recently, which is on my website, about how sound therapy helps with language development, and specifically, interestingly, how a lot of children during the last few years when we had lockdowns and children weren't able to get the normal social contact at a young age, a lot of them were delayed in their development due to that and are struggling more. And this research is in several countries. So that's what my article addressed, but also looking at studies in many countries around the world on how sound therapy has helped to accelerate that language development and help children to catch up if they do have some slight delays in their language abilities.
How did you get passionate about this particular area of research? Obviously, you're a psychologist, but you are known as a pioneer in sound therapy. What drew you to the area?
Well, it all started, Kylie, because of my mother some years ago. My mother had trouble deciphering and hearing what was happening in a noisy room, and she was very sensitive to sound. Now, we've since found out that many children have similar problems, and that's actually what causes their language development issues. But we were able to address my mother's problems with the sound therapy program in a clinic in Canada, and we then put out the portable system, and I've since written 3 books about it. One of them is about children. It's called Why Aren't I Learning? And it's just gone on from there. People have benefited so much from the program over the years, and it's been wonderful to be able to offer something that really helps children to start on the starting block instead of 3 steps behind, because if you can fix the problem of how the brain's functioning, then they can perform in school. But if you're asking them to perform and their brain just isn't functioning to deal with sound, it's so unfair. They can't catch up, they get left behind more, and they're really struggling. So it's been a very personal journey for me with my family, and it's been wonderful to be able to share that with the world and with other families as well.
And does sound therapy help children who are very impulsive or, suffer from hyperactivity? Because a lot of parents listening right now are probably thinking, but, is that the right application for my child? What would you say?
Absolutely, it does. I mean, some of the conditions where we've applied this very successfully are ADHD and children on the autism spectrum, and also dyslexia, and definitely that hyperactivity. We've heard reports for decades about how children who are just bouncing off the walls and can't manage their reactivity do sound therapy and it calms down. And there are now studies showing why that happens and what's actually happening in the brain, and all of that is summarised in the research that I've been looking into as well. So yes, it's calming and it's helping children to focus and process language. So it's similar to some of the results children get from medication, but the good thing about achieving this through sound therapy is you don't have any side effects, and it's completely harmless and it's easy and enjoyable to do, but it definitely does help with that hyperactivity and reactivity as well.
And if anyone wants to read up on this because they're really interested in it, as a lot of medications offered these days to children who are struggling with different things, but if somebody wants to read about sound therapy, is there a website they can go to?
Yes, there is. I recommend people go to mysoundtherapy.com. That's just mysoundtherapy.com, and they'll find all the information there about what we've been discussing.
Thank you for sharing all that with us. Good to have you on the program.
Oh, thanks so much, Kylie. Appreciate it.
Raphael Joudry there, psychologist and pioneer in sound therapy.